I want to welcome everybody, the audience that is out there, to our meeting tonight. My name is Elizabeth Hughes, and I'm the Director of Communications for Earth Conservancy. I want to welcome everybody to this first public meeting that's part of our feasibility study for OHV, or off-highway vehicle recreational area in Newport Township. And in addition to other staff from EC, we're joined tonight by the team from Laird, who is our project consultant. Members of our steering committee are on with us, and we have representatives from the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources with us as well. This project is being funded by a grant from DCNR through their Community Conservation Partnerships program. So there's just a handful of things I'd like to mention before we start. First, as you probably already know, this meeting is being recorded. And as you join us, the attendees are going to have their devices muted and the video turned off. We're going to start the meeting with an overview of the project and then review some preliminary results from the public survey that I hope most of you have already taken. And then after that, we're going to move into our Q&A period. We're going to answer as many questions as we can before the meeting ends at 8 o'clock. And then when we do get to that section, I'll remind you about this at that point as well. But there's two different ways that you can participate in the public comment question time period. First, you could just submit a written question in the Q&A box. It should be on your bar might be at the bottom of your screen, but there's a little Q&A icon. You just click on that and type in your question or comment. You can also ask a live question, and to get on the queue to do that, you would raise your hand by clicking the raise hand icon. Or if you're calling in by phone, you just hit *9. And then when it's your turn, we'll either call your name or use the last 4 digits of your phone number that you're calling in from, and we will unmute you and allow you to make your comment or ask your question. And we're going to alternate between the written questions and the live questions as we go on. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Terry Ostrowski, who is also from Earth Conservancy, and he is our president CEO.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Before I start, what I want to do is just first thank everyone for attending. I believe as of this morning, we had over 65 registrants to this meeting. So certainly appreciate you giving us 2 hours of your time tonight to allow us to talk about this project and to receive your input, which is going to be very valuable to make this successful. What I'd also like to do is thank DCNR, who, as Elizabeth mentioned, is funding this study. We have with us Alex McDonald, Christine DeTore, and Nick Wilo, who's the district forester. We also have some of our local representatives. I believe we have a representative from Senator Udicic's office, as well as Representative Mullery's office. So we appreciate them being here. And finally, last but not least, want to thank our steering committee, who without them, we wouldn't be able to move forward with this project. We've already had a steering committee meeting, as we'll mention later on, but we received a lot of good feedback from them, and we hope to continue their participation through the study. I won't mention every steering committee member by name, but the list of our steering committee is available on the project website, on Earth Conservancy's website. So before I go into the project overview, I just wanted to give you a brief summary of our agenda for tonight. As Elizabeth went over briefly, we are going to start off with just a project background, project overview. We'll do some introductions, then we'll start talking about the project process, how we're moving through this, and what our anticipated timeline is. As Elizabeth said, we've already had a public survey that's been available, I believe, for the past several weeks. And in that time, impressive enough, we've had over 2,500 respondents to that. So we're very impressed with that, and we certainly appreciate all that input. That public survey will be open throughout the entire length of this process until we get to the finalizing. So we'd certainly encourage you to spread the word, get that questionnaire out to people, out to your friends, out to your family, so we can receive even more input. The input that we've received so far, as Megan will go over later on, it's been very impressive. Then after the public survey, we'll go into some preliminary thoughts with our consultant, Jim Laird. And at which time after we'll go into a Q&A or comment session. Certainly feel free to open. If you don't have a question, just have a comment about this. We certainly appreciate that. Elizabeth told me that she's going to be very strict with our timeline so that we don't keep you beyond that 8 o'clock. So we're going to try to hit the Q&A around the 7 o'clock mark and allow for about an hour of your feedback. So we hope to get some good feedback from you. And then we'll be closing in with the next steps to tell you where we're going to take this project from here. Okay, Elizabeth, if you could hit the next slide, please. Okay, first question that I want to answer is how we got here. I know we have a lot of local residents who've been around for quite a while, and I'm sure they're asking, well, hey, we've heard talk of ATV study or ATV park for a long time now. So what I want to do is just give you a little background on what we've done before and how we got to the point we are now. Just for anybody who's not familiar with Earth Conservancy is an organization that began in the 1990s, 1996, with the purchase of over 16,000 acres of former coal company land that was owned by the Blue Coal Corporation. The land was in bankruptcy at that time. When we obtained those lands, one of the first things we did was to develop a master plan for all those 16,000 acres to determine what areas were best suited for what type of land use, be it commercial type of land use, residential type of land use, or even a recreational or open space type of land use. As part of that initial look, the original committee members, the original board members of Earth Conservancy felt it was very important to set aside a large amount of that area for open space and for recreation. And at that time, a goal of 10,000 acres was set to convey land into either open space, forested areas, generally protected areas, or recreational areas. Then back around 1999, Earth Conservancy developed an open space master plan, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. And if you look at some of those ideas there, again, it's really a master plan. It's really a grand scheme of things to understand, what the best open space uses are of some of the land. And if you could see some of those areas there, you'll notice maybe in the lower center of that screen, a recreational area. That is the Hanover youth soccer fields that Earth Conservancy had developed. I'm going to say maybe back about 15 years ago, and that land was eventually turned over to the Hanover Youth Soccer Association. Over on the far left of that picture, you'll see the Makanakwa Outdoor Center. And while it's not an outdoor center, Earth Conservancy did develop the Makanakwa Loop Trail, which is in that general area there, and the land has since been conveyed over to DCNR. That didn't quite make the cut. Certainly we had hopes for the Ashley Plains Heritage Park, which weren't able to follow through with. But what you also notice there is down in the Newport Township area. Back in 1999, we had looked at this area for a possible motorsports park. So moving on from there, in 2005, Earth Conservancy developed an ATV feasibility report. Okay, so when we first looked at this, it was basically a general view of all of the Earth Conservancy land as to what areas would be best suitable for an ATV park. We received feedback from local residents as for the needs and the wants of an ATV park. But this was, if you consider this, a very high level view of all the Earth Conservancy properties. To really come up with some thoughts about what the need for and where an ATV park may be feasible, and to answer some basic questions. But some of the issues that came out of that, number one, ATV riders wanted a large area to ride in. That was one of the main results of that study. And one of the other results of that study was that more effort had to be spent on the ownership model of the ATV park and how it would be operated, who would run it, as far as perpetually if this ATV park was supposed to continue. So several years after that, actually, one of the pieces that came out of that ATV feasibility study is that one of the most appropriate areas was down in Newport Township, where we own about 2,500 acres of land, of continuous land. So moving along in time, in 2019, we prepared what we called the Newport Township Master Plan, which focused mainly on the areas that we have still available down in Newport Township. And as you can see there, we looked again at this 2,500 acres of land that Earth Conservancy owns. And the master plan basically reinforced what some of the other studies have had come up with, that this land, because of its remoteness, the lack of infrastructure in that area, it was mostly geared mostly geared towards a recreational or conservation type use. And you can see that as being those darker green areas on that map, where the yellow areas are areas that may be somewhat limited suitability for development, and the lime green areas also have some suitability for development as well. Okay, Elizabeth, you want to hit the next slide? Okay, so looking as the background on how we got here, so why now? What we're looking at now is that, as I mentioned, the original study only looked at what EC properties were suitable. And as I mentioned, that Newport Township, the 25 acres that we had down there, seemed to be the most suitable area for this ATV park. So this study is really going to focus in on that area and come up with better ideas. And since back in the 2005 study, no conceptual plans were actually created, a part of this study is actually going to develop those conceptual plans. Again, why now? Again, the 2019 study did recognize that the most appropriate use for that land in Newport Township was recreational conservation because of limited infrastructure. And I think probably one of the biggest reasons why now is the popularity of ATV riding. I think our consultant Jim will explain how ATV riding has just exploded over the past decade or more. And even as we saw over the past summer with COVID, a lot more people wanted to get out and be in the outdoors because everybody's tired of being cooped up. So this really, we've seen, and obviously we've seen ourselves, a large increase in ATV and OHV ridership in Pennsylvania. And another key point of why now is back in 2019, we were starting to have discussions with DCNR that they were starting to relook at their policies regarding ATV use on state forest lands. So this really opened up some new opportunities, not in that 2,500 acres of Earth Conservancy, but that 2,500 acres is adjacent to a lot of state forest land. So that opened up even more area. So because of all of this and why now, in 2019, Earth Conservancy submitted for and was awarded a grant through this DCNR. And as you know, in 2019, how we ended up there with COVID, and a lot of things, slowed down. So it took us a little bit of time to finalize the agreement with DCNR before we were able to go out and look for a consultant. So around mid-2020, we put out an RFP to seek consultants who would help guide us through this process. And then out of that process, we met Jim Laird and his group with Laird Landscape Architecture and brought them on board at that time. All right, so Elizabeth, if you go to the next slide, what I want to do here is if anybody hasn't been able to get to our project page on the Earth Conservancy website, this is a depiction of what the study area is. And you can see this is down in Newport Township. It's quite a large area. It's approximately 10,000 acres of land in Lower Newport Township and Cunningham Township. On this map, you can see the reddish color areas are Earth Conservancy land. It's about 2,500 acres that we have there. But the largest area of land mass is the green areas, which are DCNR state forest lands. It's over 4,400 acres of land, which is adjacent or abuts some of the Earth Conservancy properties. And you'll also see some of that yellow land is owned by Newport Aggregate or Pollock Group. And we've had discussions with them, and they were certainly willing to participate in this study as well. So we have some of the three largest landowners down in that area participating in this study, which brings us to a total area of 10,000 acres. Just for give you a depiction of where this is, you can see to the upper portion of that page on the north is the Susquehanna River in green. The southernmost boundary of this study area are the Wilkes-Barre Mountains. As you can see, they're near Lily Lake. From east to west, the eastern side is Nanticoke City. The western side is Mackinac. And then the scale of this, more or less, from east to west is about 7 to 8 miles. So it's quite a large area. All right, so Elizabeth, if you go to the next slide, we'll just briefly go over the project goals here, just so everybody has an understanding of where we're going with this project. And everybody understands what our objectives are here. First of all is to investigate the wants and the needs of the ATV and off-highway vehicle riders and also other outdoor recreational enthusiasts. Obviously, from the 2005 study, we know ATV riders want this area to ride. They need an area to ride. But we're also looking at this to maybe be an attraction point where we could bring in other types of recreational activities. So that's going to be part of this study as well. We also want to investigate challenges and benefits of an outdoor motorized recreational area. Challenges, obviously, there's legal issues, liability issues, there's land issues. So there's a lot of challenges that we need to look and see how we can overcome them. Benefits, I think, as we move through this project, we're hoping to see that, or hoping to show that there's actually a large economic benefit that will come out of this if we have a large ATV park that we're, not only the locals are using, but we're bringing in people from outside of the area who may use our local hotels, local restaurants. The third goal of this is to develop those conceptual plans that weren't developed in the 2005 study for a 10,000 acre study area. Another key point or another key goal of this study would be to investigate ownership models. And what we're going to look at are both public and private entities who may be interested or who may be able to both own and operate this ATV park, where we've already had discussions with some other parks that some of you may be familiar with. Some are owned by county authorities, while some are owned by private entities. So we're going to look at these different types of models to see what is best suited for our area and for our site. And the final goal of this is to prepare a report and outline what the permitting requirements are, to make this a reality, what the funding opportunities are, and then what our next steps are towards moving this into a planning and construction phase to make this a reality in our area. So I think with that, what I'm going to do is introduce Jim Laird from Laird Landscape Architecture, and I'll let him introduce his team. Jim?
Well, thank you very much, Terry. It's a privilege to be part of this project, and thank you very much, Elizabeth and Jason, everyone at the Earth Conservancy that has worked very diligently to pull this opportunity together for the public meeting. And certainly thank you, Christine Dettori and other folks from DCNR for allowing this new renaissance, so to speak, of motorized recreation and facilitating this at DCNR, mainly through the ATV Restricted Fund, which we know is now 100% generated through ATV registrations. I myself, Jim Laird, the consulting team leader involved in the project, have been riding my entire life since my earliest memories. So started out on a handcrafted three-wheeler that my grandfather made from an old lawnmower to mini bikes and dirt bikes, and then eventually kind of skipped over the three-wheeler phase. I was never good at that. I always ran over my legs with three-wheelers. So got on some four-wheelers, and nowadays continuing my passion for really dirt bikes. That's my my main mode of transportation, which I love and continue to enjoy with our family. So I'm a landscape architect registered in Pennsylvania and New York, and We've been working with DCNR on projects for 25 years or so, and we've been privileged to work on many of the non-motorized projects in the state, significant trails and greenways, park and recreation master plans, feasibility studies, concept plans, major transportation corridor studies, such as the 1,300-mile September 11th National Memorial Trail. But it's really been great to come back to our natural passion here in motorized recreation and be able to apply our experience and our convictions as stewards of the land and collective, experience with DCNR and the environmental process, conservation minded, but also open minded to other modes of recreation that are emerging quickly. Over the last 30 years, we've kind of seen the motorized recreation world kind of go underground. And now it's emerging as a real major and significant factor in Pennsylvania's future as an outdoor recreation state. We'll talk a little bit about that more, but let me introduce the rest of my team, which in the photograph here, I'm taking a selfie of myself and Jessica. We could go back to that slide. And we have Jim Sr. here in the orange shirt, and then we have Bill Ridding in the green shirt, and Jessica's here with thumbs up. We had a great ride on the property, kind of an initial look at the site and the environment and the existing trails, some of the incredible views, some of the soil types, some of the erosion problems, some of the access issues that need to be addressed. But pretty impressed overall with the entire existing trail system that's already cut in out here, whether it's from folks riding out here unauthorized or from past mining, reclamation projects. Many different modes of transportation have, revised this landscape over the past decades, 50 years, 100 years even. So it is a healing landscape, as we talked about before, but we were privileged to have the opportunity to take a firsthand look at it. So let me introduce, we'll go down the line here. Jessica, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Jessica's probably muted. There you go.
I'm Jessica Hepner. I have a background in environmental science. I'm currently mostly helping with site reconnaissance and GIS mapping.
Great, thanks, Jess. Bill?
Oh, is this a short version? Elizabeth won't pull me off. I'll go for my 2 minutes. I'm William A. Ridding III, War, Landscape Architecture, but I go by Bill. I've been a design planner with the Montgomery County Planning Commission, landscape architect with builders, engineering firms, and landscape architecture firms since 1983. With the county, I've been a member of this Cyclist with Disability on the steering committee for Bike Monco, the bicycle plan for Montgomery County. Also a member of the representing accessibility on the steering committee for Montgomery County on their complete streets policy. I served as chairman of regional planning in the Upper Perk Valley and member on the Marlboro Township Planning Commission and Township Park and Rec Board. I'm currently a member of the Appalachian Mountain Club Pennsylvania Highlands Trail Network Steering Committee. It was while I was on the DCNR Pennsylvania Trails Advisory Committee, where I represented persons with disabilities, that I met Jim. I shared my passion with motorsports with Jim, local dirt track, stock car racing, and NASCAR. And that led to my first ATV ride in 2019. To put it in perspective, last year when COVID hit and my gym closed, and I require exercise on a regular basis, I rode 604 miles on my Specialized brand name step-through bike. 80 of those miles were with the meetup group where I mostly trailed the pack. What an ATV allows me to do is to keep up with the pack. It allows me to go places that I ordinarily would not be able to access. So after talking to many people with disabilities, excuse me, I believe that's what they all want to do. They want to get out just like everyone else, enjoy the outdoor landscape and be part of the group. Having cerebral palsy since birth, universal design, accessibility, and inclusion have always been part of my mindset. Now being part of this team, I feel as though I can add an additional perspective to the feasibility study. So if anyone feels like they need to reach out, feel free to contact me. And thank you, Jim and Earth Conservancy for having me on this project team.
Absolutely, Bill. Thanks for being part of it. And we appreciate your service on the Trails Advisory Committee. So thank you. I'm going to call on Angelica now to introduce herself. Angelica is on the red and black four-wheeler here, the quad in the upper right-hand corner, out on trails. I believe we were at Famous Reading Outdoors that day, perhaps. Angelica?
I'm Angelica Laird. I serve as the certified park and recreation professional on the project. So I'm mostly involved with the programming, a little bit in maybe the ownership and some plan review, as well as some of the concept planning.
Oh. Okay, great. And last but not least, Jim Laird Sr. shown in the orange shirt. I don't think Jim is on the call tonight, but he's on his TT350 there. 1986 TT350, Old Faithful, the red and white Yamaha in the lower right-hand corner. But this is actually part of the Earth Conservancy property that we're heading out to scope out the trails on dirt bikes and quads. And I think this was a day Jason Tarnowski was kind enough to lead us on a first reconnaissance site view, which we discovered already entails many, many miles of just beautiful trails as far as scenery, change of landscape, topography, change of soil types and surface. Just a beautiful, beautiful landscape, really, that is healing. It is a healing landscape, previously mined to a large degree, but also just a really good reflection of the environmental restoration and recovery that can happen here in Pennsylvania. So let's go to the next slide, please.
Jim, let's give Megan a chance to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
An opportunity.
Who else do we have?
Forget about Megan.
I'm sorry, Megan. Allow me to
No problem.
recoup that. Megan Segoviak is from our team, and she brings a wealth of information and knowledge and experience from an organization called the Institute. And I have to say, Megan, we are privileged to have you on our team because not only are you an expert in your field, but you are a local resident. And that was a selling point for me. I really believe that having you on board is a bridge to the local community, but it really reflects well that in your professional, career, you can contribute to the project, but you also have a really, really great grasp on the community needs, wants, desires, challenges. And I was pleased to hear that your family are riders and have some experience in the motorized realm as well. So Megan, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Stahoviak. I'm a research analyst with the Institute, as Jim mentioned, and we're assisting Jim and his team with analyzing the market demand and also the potential economic impact that the park could have on the region. And as Jim mentioned, live very near the study area. It's pretty much in our backyard. So we're very interested in doing this analysis for the region.
I don't think we have Terry. Do we have Terry on board tonight, Megan? Probably.
No, Terry's not here tonight.
Okay. All right. Terry is the CEO of the Institute, and we appreciate her input and professional analysis of many of the aspects of this feasibility study as well. Did I miss anyone else? team. Sorry.
I think we're good.
I think we got everybody. Okay, thanks, Terry. Okay, we prepared this slide to show everyone the general overview of the planning and implementation process. Very simply put, the feasibility study is the initial aspect of a determination of should we pursue a project, should we proceed down the road of, towards determining who the appropriate next owner or manager should be of the property. And then after that, eventually design and engineering. One of the tabs we could have placed in here would be grants and financing to get us to through to construction. So there's a long process here to get us to actually build improvements on the land. But for those listening who are riders, we understand there is an incredible trail system existing out there right now. We're not really looking to design a whole lot more trails. The effort is to determine ownership, management, maintenance, down the road, insurance, liability issues. What are some of the key components that should be integrated into the site, such as parking lots, trailheads, access controls, comfort stations, restrooms, sign plans, and other areas that we will talk about here shortly. Other programs that may be introduced to the site, other action sports, such as rock climbing, kayaking, hiking, mountain biking, and the list goes on. There is a wealth of other opportunities for other activities. So that's kind of what the feasibility study is also looking to vet out in terms of what is appropriate to be placed on the site in terms of programs and also facilities. So yeah, ownership really means who's going to own this ultimately. Currently, Earth Conservancy is stepping up to own the property temporarily, but then is looking for a long-term management and maintenance operator that would own and maintain and operate the site in the long term. So that's very important. Negotiating the role of the major landholders. There are many other property owners, as Terry reviewed earlier. So it is important for us to cooperate fully with those landowners, understand their concerns, their rights, the opportunities that they see appropriate for their land. So it's really a matter in this feasibility study of listening, really being good listeners, finding out what the community wants to raise as concerns and opportunities, but really what is appropriate then also for the site. The ownership model that is selected ultimately will, of course, determine the funding options that are available and funding options that will be pursued. There are many different models, and we're looking into those. And as Terry mentioned, we are interviewing or speaking with other DCNR funded and private, for-profit and not-for-profit entities that already have set up and currently manage and operate other motorized recreation areas. And those other recreation areas are really diverse in their programs and facilities. They many times often provide camping, kayaking, hiking, mountain biking, trails for full-size vehicles, trails for dirt bikes, trails for snowmobiles. So multi-use is a word we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's true multi-use in the sense that it's motorized, non-motorized with other support facilities. Next slide, Terry. Elizabeth, thank you. We also put together this slide to demonstrate kind of a timeline, essentially, of where we stand now compared to where the whole project got started, and then what is the end goal. So there are a lot of words here, but if you kind of read those as I talk, you'll see on the left there that the yellow arrows indicate the history of how we got where we are. Terry did a nice job of summarizing that in the beginning. But Earth Conservancy and DCNR and other entities, local municipalities, property owners, got together years ago, long before we were involved, to really initiate this project, envision it, and pursue cooperative efforts with DCNR to submit grant applications, have those grants reviewed and approved, and eventually successfully attained. And those grants are what is actually facilitating and paying for our services as consultants, and will likely also pay for built features and programs down the road in years to come. The blue arrow indicates where Laird Landscape Architecture came on board as the chosen consultant for the project to come alongside Earth Conservancy, work with their staff as a team, and move this feasibility study through the process of initiating with a kickoff meeting, taking site inventory and analysis, which we have initiated, but there's a lot to see out there. It's a large property. So we look forward to getting back out there again, hopefully in the winter months, and then again in the spring when the change of the landscape is more visible. And then also in the spring when the leaves come out, we can kind of get a feel for the flora and fauna in the spring and summer months. Key person interviews are coming up, and Bill is instrumental in conducting a lot of those, as well as myself. And here we are at the green arrow with tonight's public meeting. This is a first public meeting. There will be a final public meeting towards the end, to the right near the red grants word. That will be an open public meeting similar to this. We hope to be able to meet in person, but if not, we will have another public meeting like this virtually, where you all certainly are invited, and invite your friends and families and neighbors, because we really want to get the most coverage we can out of this discussion. We'll, after this public meeting, move on to a concept plan, preparing from the feedback we received from you, the public, and participants tonight, in concert with the feedback from the very nice and well done, well prepared, and well solicited questionnaire, public questionnaire and feedback that we will look at in a moment. That feedback is going to guide the concept plan, the programmatic and the physical built potential projects and facilities that could be situated on the site. So programs and events, and then that will lead us into a phased implementation plan, which we basically, instead of trying to wait, forever to get the money to build this project, where can we start year 1, year 2, year 3 on the short term to see immediate results, so that we can move into some level of immediate improvements or access to the site. But then what are some of the more expensive projects that'll take longer to gain the funding for those, or they require permits that are going to take a while to either design or process through the regulatory agencies involved. Then, of course, towards the end, we want to put together a probable cost. We need to know how long these projects will take over time, but also what they're going to cost. And then we want to match that with grants. We want to make sure that Earth Conservancy and the future owner manager has a guideline as to, how do we pay for this, these proposals? How do we improve the trails, pay for signs, pay for parking lots, pay for restrooms, or whatever the other programs and facilities are determined to be appropriate. And towards the end, we'll wrap that up in a final report. We will welcome you back for another final public meeting. And then we will highly recommend that Earth Conservancy or the new owner manager immediately pursue grants to start implementing the programs and facilities for the site. Thank you, Elizabeth. Terry, you want to take that one, or do you want me to introduce this?
Yep, I thought that was your part, but no, that's fine.
Oh, I'll go ahead. Thanks. Sorry. So, for everyone looking at this slide, this is what we're looking at in terms of the potential results that will come out of the feasibility study. What do we expect to get from an OHV park or an off-highway vehicle park? We're using the term OHV, by the way, because off-highway vehicle really is an umbrella, so to speak, of many other types of motorized recreation. Off-highway vehicles, as we'll discuss moving forward, can be everything from full-size Jeeps and pickup trucks to 4x4s, on and off-road legal trucks, Jeeps, 4x4s, snowmobiles, ATVs, and of course the ATVs now include four-wheelers or quads, and the very popular and exponentially growing in popularity side-by-sides. That's the 2 or 4-wheel drive side-by-side seats, seating each other side by side with a roll cage, driving like a car, basically. Polaris, the early Polaris, they're really kind of called buggies, but they're side-by-sides. And then, of course, dirt bikes, e-bikes are kind of falling under the OHV umbrella now as well. So the whole point of conducting the feasibility study really is to determine whether or not this particular property is appropriate and accommodating to organized and legal riding of OHVs of all types. There are other programs too that we want to discuss moving forward, such as rock climbing, hiking, walking, kayaking, bicycling. Some of you are going to have your own ideas, and we really want to hear from you. And therefore, the questionnaire that's provided, both as part of at the end of this particular public meeting, is going to gather those creative ideas. So please don't be bashful about proposing your ideas or putting the ideas out there. You can do that in writing after the fact, or you can chime in tonight and let us know what those ideas might be. So designated places for specific activities. This is critical. The whole idea of and benefit of designating motorized recreation trails is that it gives people a legal place to ride, so that it's an enjoyable group and family-oriented recreation program that we don't have to worry about whether we're trespassing or riding legally. We know we are. We're on designated trails, and along with that comes a level of responsibility to abide by the rules, be registered, wear your helmet, ride safely, and be courteous of other drivers, riders, and trail users of all types. Another major important factor in this whole study is liability reduction. We really need to determine what type of liability coverage is going to be appropriate. We're going to look at the RULWA Act, the Rural Use of Land and Water Act. We're going to look into appropriate and complementary insurances similar to other riding areas, and of course waivers. Many of you, if you are regularly involved in motorized recreation, you know that when you go to a motocross facility or a snowmobile race event or a riding area, more often than not, you will sign a waiver that indicates that you are informed and knowledgeable of the hazards and dangers and potential injuries that could, abound, similar to going to participating at a ski resort or a mountain bike event. You sign a waiver indicating your level of understanding of the risks and privileges that ensue. So environmental sustainability and accountability through quality management and design. This is absolutely inherent in everything we talk about tonight. We are not just talking about providing an area for people to go ride on motorized recreation. We are talking about a lot more. We're talking about an action park, so to speak, with many different venues and a wide array of opportunities for people with different outdoor recreation desires. Everything we do must be environmentally sustainable. We will apply in the future, and the new owner and Earth Conservancy will apply those best management practices that would stabilize the trails, stabilize the facilities, to make sure that the maintenance and management of these facilities are in fact sustainable. We do not want to create a nightmare maintenance regime for Earth Conservancy or the future owner. We want to make sure that these trails are designed well to minimize erosion and sedimentation, but also be stabilized in such a way that they would be minimally require minimal maintenance over time. All trails require maintenance. I mean, if you hike the Appalachian Trail, you know that there's a lot of maintenance involved, but the idea is to minimize that, make it sustainable as possible. And that's also part of the feasibility factor. manageable trails that are easy to maintain will prove feasible in the long term. We also want to address misunderstood and unmet expectations of the sports communities, motorsports, climbing, rock climbing, paintball. There's so many new extreme sports out there that we know the millennials love. We know that folks, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s love as well. We just need to provide a matched, suitable site for those venues and experiences and facilities. Equal to providing legal and safe and legal and organized places for people to ride, climb, hike, kayak, we realize that this is a tremendous opportunity for the region in terms of economic development. Agriculture is now has been forever, as far as we can in our lifetimes remember, been the #1 industry in Pennsylvania. DCNR and other agencies have recently announced and confirmed that outdoor recreation is #2, strong #2. Outdoor recreation is now right there behind agriculture as really a future of Pennsylvania. We have the opportunity to become a go-to state in the East for outdoor recreation of all kinds. We want to draw outdoor enthusiasts from outside the state, far outside the state, not just local communities, but visitors from 3, 4, 5, 6 states away. We see this happening in other areas such as the Hatfield-McCoy in West Virginia. That's the golden standard. That's the poster child, so to speak, for motorized recreation. And we have the results. The results are in. The success stories are available, touting the numbers in terms of economic development that is now proven through those projects. We want the locals to benefit from this project. The locals really need a place to ride. We want them to realize their communities will be improved through new restaurants opening, new services of all types. Tires will need repaired, parts will need to be sold, helmets, goggles, chains, sprockets, all the normal wear and tear parts. We will need facilities and services in the area. Sales, parts, and repairs. It's a huge part of the whole motorized industry. And there are many jobs that really can be created locally through this venue in terms of that. We also want people to be able to feel welcome to stay here overnight. Most motorized recreation programs in the state and beyond really are realizing it is becoming a sport that people want to do for multiple days. And because of that, we get the overnight accommodation needs, such as hotels, Airbnbs, bed and breakfast. People want to camp. They want to be able to stay either in their own RV that they pull into the site, or they want to rent a cabin. We'll be doing that tomorrow, actually. We're headed up to Potter County to do some snowmobiling. So we will be renting a hotel room and with a large group. This is another dynamic. People want to stay many nights and they want to travel with large groups. And we'll see those statistics presented by Megan here in just a few slides. Keep that in mind as we move forward. So next, let's allow Terry or Elizabeth to show us a clip of what is happening in other parts of Pennsylvania in terms of success stories.
Jim, I was going to say we are running a little short on time, and I'd like Megan to be able to talk. So can we move ahead?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry. It's a good video.
Save it for the end.
I will. Good idea.
We begin tonight with the tale.
There we go. So yeah, we're going straight into the public survey right now. Megan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, so as Terry mentioned, Earth Conservancy launched a public survey in mid-January to get feedback from the public about the feasibility for an OHV park in the area. The survey is available on the website. It's also available for people to respond via mail or email. We will be accepting responses through May. So far, we've collected, as of early February, about 2,400 responses, and we've gotten in additional responses since then. The results that I will be sharing with you are preliminary. We are still collecting responses. We encourage people to respond if they haven't already done so. We're looking for feedback from area residents, business owners, property owners, and off-highway vehicle riders. So next slide. So looking at the results that we've received so far, about 3/4 of them are from people in Pennsylvania. Another 21% have come from the states surrounding PA, including 9% from New Jersey. So there is interest in out-of-state riders in our region. In looking at Pennsylvania alone, nearly 40% of the responses that we've received from those in Pennsylvania have come from Luzerne County. And this includes in the call out map in the top right, the Nanticoke zip code and areas surrounding that, Ashley, Hanover Township, Wilkes-Barre, Bear Creek, Glen Line, Dallas, Courtdale, Larksville. So there is, a strong response from the Luzerne County area. We've also gotten responses from people that are in southeastern PA. Although under 5% for each of these counties, we're definitely getting input from out of area riders. Next slide. Looking at the characteristics of the responses that we've received so far, nearly 40% of those responding have been between the ages of 25 to 55, and most are current OHV riders. We've gotten limited input from those in the younger age groups, and we'd like to see more feedback from younger members of the community. We know that they are riders and, they're kind of the future of the region, so we'd like to have their input also. The majority of the respondents, 81%, have been male. We have gotten some feedback from females, but primarily male respondents. Over 90% of the respondents have self-identified as white, non-Hispanic. And we've also heard from some veterans and those with disabilities or other physical limitations. So we asked respondents if they would be in favor of an OHV area in Newport Township. And overall, of all the responses we've received thus far, 95% said that they are in favor, 3% are not, and 2% are unsure. When we look at just the Luzerne County respondents, 88% are in favor, 8% are not, and 4% are unsure. And then we also looked at it, support for the park among both riders and non-riders. So the majority are current riders that are in favor of the park, but there's also 10% that are non-riders who said that they would be in favor of an OHV area. So far there's been strong support from those responding to the survey. Next slide. We asked respondents if they had any areas of concern with the OHV park, and we looked at the feedback overall among Luzerne County residents and those not in favor of the park. So 45% of those responding in the far right grouping didn't have any concerns. Among those in Luzerne County, the top response or the top concerns among those who expressed some concerns are overcrowding, safety, and maintenance. Among those who are not in favor of the OHV park, the biggest concerns were related to environmental damage, noise, and trespassing. Related to the environmental concerns, it should be noted that the study area, as Jim mentioned, is on mine-scarred land, and that environmental sustainability and accountability would be taken into account. Some of the environmental concerns could include what we've noted through some of the open feedback that we've received, littering and garbage disposal. There's also feedback that we received that there are some concerns with the cost of the park and the potential impact on hunting. And some respondents have expressed concern with having an influx of out-of-town riders and the disruption that it may cause, kind of the perception that it might ruin it for the local audience. But as we said, we're taking these into consideration, and definitely the environmental sustainability and accountability will be taken into account. Next slide. The majority of those who have responded to the survey are current riders, 88% of them, and they're seasoned riders. Half of them have been riding for over 15 years, and the remaining half have, kind of split between their years of experience, but very seasoned OHV riders. We asked them the types of vehicles that they own or use, and some of these categories can overlap. Over half said that they own or use a truck or a Jeep or an ATV. Side-by-sides, dirt bikes, and 4x4s were also common. When asked what type of courses they would prefer, the majority, 93%, prefer trail riding courses. Around half or more are also interested in rock crawling or obstacle challenge courses. And open areas or mudding areas are also preferred by over 40% of riders. We also wanted to find out a little bit of their riding patterns. So when asked how many times they've gone riding in the past year, over 58% have gone riding more than 10 times. Another 22% have gone 5 to 10 times within the past year. Long rides are common, with nearly half reporting that they ride 5 to 6 hours at a time, or 30% saying they ride 7 hours or more. They also tend to ride in large groups. As Jim mentioned, it's kind of a group sport. Over 50% say they ride in groups of 5 or more. And they primarily ride on weekends, according to 61% of respondents, although 36% said that they will ride at any time they don't have a preference. The people that have responded to the survey are also familiar with other OHV parks. Over 83% have said they've traveled to another OHV park or riding area, and they're willing to go a distance to access these experiences. 3/4 have said they would be willing to drive a distance of at least 50 miles or more to access these parks. And when they travel to an OHV destination, just over a third say it's usually a day trip. However, 38% said it's either an overnight stay or several days. There is a portion that says it varies, kind of depends on where they're going and the length of the drive. But this highlights the potential for an economic benefit to the communities. We got some feedback on spending for those who travel to OHV parks. And this, gives you a breakdown of what they typically spend on both fuel and then on other expenses. About 50% said they spend between $50 and $100 on fuel. On average, it's about $83 when traveling to an OHV park. And then on other expenditures, it varies, but the average expenditure is about $146. We asked respondents their preferences for a day pass versus a season pass, and you can see that they're pretty evenly split, indicating that both options should be offered. Over half feel that a fair price for a season pass would be between $150 to $250, although 31% feel it should be a little bit lower, between $75 to $100. For a day pass, combined 80% of respondents feel a fair price would be between $10 and $30. Some noted that the price, would depend on the size of the park, the number and types of trails and amenities. And they also noted that other considerations should be taken into account, with discounts for local riders, in-state versus out-of-state riders, having separate passenger or prices for riders versus passengers, and having family pass options. When looking at what types of facilities or amenities they would be most interested in, having access to restrooms and a campground were, the highest amenities that would be desired. And they would also like to have other activities available at an OHV park. They expressed interest in a variety of activities, with a firing range being most common, along with hiking and mountain biking, but certainly a variety of other activities were noted. Although it's not noted here, 84% also expressed interest in attending professional events at an OHV park. So that could be another potential economic draw for the region. So in terms of trail accessibility, there is strong support for trail connectivity, with 95% saying they would support regulated limited OHV use to access other towns and trails. Again, they prefer those longer rides, so they want to be able to go from place to place. And they'd also like to see community connector trails so that they can access local amenities for fuel or food or lodging. So just so far what we've learned, and I kind of went through them quickly, but the slides will be available on the website. The majority are in favor of the OHV park. They do ride and they have years of experience. The concerns that should be addressed by those not in favor, again, environmental damage, noise and trespassing. There is a potential benefit to be realized from visitor spending and economic development. There's strong support for having that accessibility and connectivity to towns and communities. And we want to make sure we're taking local riders and residents into consideration. So again, if you haven't responded thus far, please provide your input.
Okay, this is, we're going to move on to this preliminary thoughts slide here. Okay, we're looking at, just for everyone, I guess everybody can still hear me. You're still getting sound, audio? Yes, okay, great. So these are just a few images of the tour that Jason Tarnowski was willing to give us an initial view here. In the left-hand side, many of the roads, trails that exist on the site are old hauling roads, and they look very much like this. There's different slopes and terrain, but many are rocky, many have coal dust or coal calm on them, and very, very wonderful trails, actually. There's enough roughness here that there's kind of speed control and traffic calming built in, but the scenic aspects of the landscape are just incredible. As a landscape architect, I was really impressed with the diversity of flora and fauna that exists on the site, more than we see in other coal areas, actually. Off-road passage, this is an existing arch tunnel pipe, actually, kind of a squash pipe that's Jason brought to our attention that is actually was used to convey coal from one side of the street to the other. This is actually a piece of history. So it was actually part of the local coal mining operations. And then, of course, down below here in the lower right, this is a very good sample of the trails that we witnessed on our first tour. Just beautiful landscape. The scenery, the boulder outcrops, there is so much to be told here in terms of the stories and environmental education that can be taught through, again, the diversity of this flora and fauna, but just the beauty, the grand beauty of the site itself. Next. Thanks, Elizabeth. There are some mining hazards. There are old mining portals that would need to be, some need to be blocked off, some need to be vented, some need to be addressed in terms of, whether or not any access would be provided, even to go look at them. So there are those remnants of the mining industry, many of which tell a great story, and I think certainly need to be interpreted in terms of interpretive panels and education opportunities. Great views. There are overlooks called Hawaii. This is a famous local overlook that many know if you've ever been out there. Views to the Susquehanna, and of course this place called the Library, which is an incredible rock outcrop that many people enjoy rappelling and rock climbing at this location. Next. We've put together a preliminary map. This is not a concept map. This is actually an inventory map, and we don't need to get in the weeds with this. You're welcome to look at this a little bit later, but There are many places such as rock climbing that people enjoy now, trails that people have enjoyed for many decades. There's a place up here called the SCI Retreat. That's a soon to be closed penitentiary that has history as a facility for widows and youth. So many trails, refuse piles, coal calms, large open areas, just an incredible diverse landscape here with so many opportunities. Next. I brought this slide in from another project. This was borrowed from the Indian Creek Valley ATV Club. You see there in the lower left. Their concentric black circles show 1 hour and 2 hour driving circles from their location in Fayette County. But I wanted you to be able to see how that relates to Luzerne County's site here at the Earth Conservancy's property. Again, the green rings represent 1 hour and 2 hour driving concentric rings focused on the study area. But these dots that we're looking at real simply tell the story of registrations by county. The red dots represent the density of legally registered ATVs in Pennsylvania. And now these are only the registered and legal ATVs. These are not all the ATVs that exist in the state. It's important to note that because by observation and 30, 40 years in the industry, I believe that the 300,000 registrations that are on record with DCNR probably only represent 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 physical actual units in the state. So there are many, many more out there that are not registered. But we're doing our part to try to recommend people get their machines registered and be part of the plan. The blue dots represent legal riding areas, and those are areas that are either for-profit, not-for-profit, or public riding trails. The open blue circles represent 2 large areas that were too large to enclose in blue because they would obscure too much information. This circle in the eastern part surrounding Anthracite Outdoor Adventure area, the green dot to the right, is 20,000 acres called Famous Redding Outdoors. And then Rock Run is the green circle in the western portion of the state, which is one of the major DCNR sponsored funded projects that we all enjoy riding at. Those are great examples. But again, we want to show the relationship on the coverage and impact area that the Earth Conservancy's current property has to offer the region and the state as a whole. So with that, I'll leave it. Let's move on to the next. Terry?
Okay, apologies. We ran a little bit over there than what I had hoped, but what I want to do now is open the floor for either questions or comments. I think Elizabeth has outlined for us in the beginning how we could do that, but here's another slide if anybody's interested in doing that now. Elizabeth, do we have any questions that we received already from the chat?
Yes, I'm going to open the floor up to Joe. He has his hand raised, so hold on 1 second, Joe. Okay, you should be able to unmute.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Great to meet everyone here. It's great to put a face to a name with Jim and Bill. I'm an off-road vehicle user myself. I've grown up on dirt bikes and quads. And so this is extremely exciting to me. But actually, I was initially concerned when I heard about the study because I utilize this area for rock climbing. And this area actually has been used for rock climbing for over 40 years. There was a famous climber by the name of Lynn Hill, who was the first person to ever climb El Capitan in Yosemite Valley. And she used to climb at Little Old Mackinac in Pennsylvania. It's known for its strong and safe rock. The rock quality there is very, very high. So it's a very unique and precious resource to rock climbers. And for about the past 20 years, rock climbers have organized cleanup events at these cliffs, which entail either dragging out abandoned towers, tires, refrigerators, We've done graffiti removal projects with both DCNR and state parks. We do trail maintenance. So rock climbers are stewards of the land. And I was extremely excited to hear that you guys are considering preserving, the rock climbing opportunities here in Macanaqua. The questions I have is, have you considered, based on the fact that, rock climbers are ambassadors and stewards of the land, as are many hikers and bikers as well. Have you considered any like volunteer models to empower the people who are currently using the land to help with these projects and help maintain the land? And also, what have you considered as far as like pricing models for these other user groups? The pricing models for someone coming hiking, I would imagine would be sort of different than someone that's coming to be an off-road vehicle user. So volunteer options and pricing models. Do you guys have any comments on that?
I'll take a stab. Joe, one of the great things about the ATV restricted fund is that it is probably really, I believe, the only self-funded trail program in the Commonwealth right now. Not only does liquid fuel money from motorized recreation finance the RTP program, the recreational trails program, but the motorized recreation realm really is largely supported by its own registration fees. So my point in saying that is, along with allowing motorized recreation to help develop the land, the property, there are so many spin-off benefits that climbers, kayakers will enjoy, such as flush toilets and restrooms and comfort stations and parking lots. So to a large degree, a large portion of the money and the funding in the future will come from motorized recreation generated by the users. Whereas, rail trails, those types of projects are funded also through the RTP program, which comes from liquid fuels, but real estate transactions through the C2P2 fund and so forth. So there are many different sources of grants that we can talk about in the next couple slides to finance these projects in the future. And I know you had maybe provided Bill with some interesting information about other grant resources that you're aware of.
Yeah, Joe, thank you very much for attending.
Nice to meet you.
Jim, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. Joe, what was the second half? That was just talking about financing. The second portion of your question was?
He was asking about volunteerism.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Volunteer efforts.
Excellent question. So one of the things that we desperately need to figure out in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is how can we allow volunteers to do their thing, to help us help ourselves and help the state in state parks, state trails, private, for-profit, not-for-profit. A lot of times we have volunteers that want to help and do work, but we have liability concerns, or insurance won't allow volunteers to come on site, or they can't, they have to be certified to operate a chainsaw. And all those regulations are great, but it does take a significant amount of coordination and cooperation to organize and manage volunteer corps. One of my favorite persons that just retired was Bob Falwell from the Schuylkill River Greenway Association. And Bob literally was an artist, and his legacy will live on as the artist of harnessing the power of volunteer corps. And he saved the Schuylkill River Greenway Association hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years because of his volunteer corps, his expertise in being able to manage volunteers. And he figured out ways to allow them on site, handle tools, and get a lot of work done. So we will embrace and highly recommend that volunteers be allowed to do significant work projects on the site in the future.
Okay, the next question.
That's awesome.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I provided Bill with a resource to the Access Fund, and they're who climbers work with as far as volunteerism, land acquisitions, liability, and they've done the private models, they've done government models, they've done county models. So I think that'd be a great resource for you guys to look into, both on how to navigate the legal challenges of allowing rock climbing on the land, and also how to navigate the complexities of volunteerism. So yeah, that's the Access Fund. So look them up, and they're always willing to help. It's a nonprofit, and oftentimes they do their work for free.
That's great. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, the next question I have is from David, and he asked, will there be rules, restrictions on how close the trail's ATV can be from someone's home? In other words, my house, as well as many others in Newport Township, have land that is right next to their home that is in the riding areas of the map. Would not want to hear ATVs all day and night ripping near our homes.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're going to have to consult Megan, put Megan on the spot as a local resident. But now we want to take that question seriously because, I own property up in New York where we allow some riding, but we understand that it's noise and dust is not always welcome by the neighbors. And we need to be respectful of all the neighbors and the entire community. So I think job number one would be if you're comfortable doing so, let us know where you live or the general vicinity. And I think we could probably make sure that there is a buffer provided to some degree. I'm not sure exactly, of course, I don't know where you live, but buffers can and should be built into the design and the planning. Some of the natural terrain also acts as a buffer. We were actually surprised. Certain places you stand, you can hear different noises. Other places, the mountains and the terrain actually buffers a lot of that. Somewhat on the landscape, but not as much. Trees don't buffer as much sound as we'd like, but the terrain will. So very good point. I think I would recommend that you keep in touch with the planners and the future management and maintenance staff to help make that part of the design philosophy. Thank you. Good point.
Okay, the next person speaking is going to be Dave P. So I'm going to unmute you, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Dave Porzy. I'm actually the Director of Operations for the Northumberland County Anthracite Outdoor Adventure Area down in Cole Township, the AOAA. First off, congratulations. What a great project you guys are starting off with. I think this is absolutely a wonderful addition if this would go through. One of the things that we look at with the AOAA, watching this here brings back a lot of memories from about 10 years ago when we were going through all of these things down here in Shamokin and Cole Township. And, Jim and I have been in contact. We're going to schedule a phone call to talk a little bit about how we did some things down there and some of the heartburn and things that we went through. And I'm sure there's some things that you guys haven't thought of that we have. And we're willing to help along, and give a hand with this. And, a lot of people have said, oh my God, a 10,000 acre ATV park, that's competition. Absolutely not. This is absolutely an addition to what we have with the AOAA, with Famous Reading Outdoors, Roush Creek, Rock Run. This is just another feather in our cap if this thing goes through to bring on more people to this area where recreation and tourism is key. So my hat's off to you guys. Great job so far. And, down here from Northumberland County, the guys at the AOA, we're willing to lend a hand. So please reach out, and we'd love to get a tour of the facility at some point.
Thank you, David.
Okay, I have a couple questions that came in from Gary and Robert about hunting. I know, Terry, you can talk a little bit about our lands right now in the area, but Jim, you might want to talk about, if and how that could be accommodated.
Sure.
Just concerning our property, the 2,500 acres that we showed on the previous map, Earth Conservancy has that land right now as part of the Hunter Access Program. So that land is available to walk on and to utilize for hunting during the regulated hunting seasons. So that's a use or that's actually out there and available right now for residents who would like to take advantage of that. As far as, when this, if this project goes through, if there's going to still be hunting opportunities, I think, Jim, there may be something that could be done to still accommodate the hunters.
Yeah, absolutely. We would not want to take away any privilege of hunting. We're losing a lot of hunters every year, and I think we're kind of seeing an inversely proportionate increase in motorized recreation enthusiasts when our hunters retire or give up hunting or just change courses for whatever reason. But Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell us how AOAA operates your hunting season. I know that our goal my recommendation, would be that hunting would be certainly allowed to continue. And I think it's just a matter of defining the level of interest and the seasons that would need to be respected in terms of, shutdown or cooperative scheduling, so to speak. So Dave, how do you guys shut down for hunting season, I believe, correct?
Yes, yeah, we do. We shut down for the 2 weeks of rifle season.
Okay.
And I know with rifle being open on Saturdays and Sundays now, we actually tell people there's 2 first days. Go somewhere else and hunt for the weekend and then come see us on Monday. But that's how we handle rifle season. We close for the 2 weeks of rifle. We let people drive on the Eastern Reserve with their pickup trucks. There is no motorized access, meaning no ATV, dirt bike, side-by-side, OHV access during those 2 weeks except Sunday. Our Western Reserve is a walk-in only due to lease agreements that we have with other landowners who don't want people hunting on it. Now, as far as any of the other hunting seasons, we do allow people to walk in either the Eastern or Western Reserve before we open for business at 9 a.m. to hunt. So I got a lot of people that come out during archery, and their vehicles will be sitting at the trailhead in the parking lot, and a lot of turkey season, things like that, where we see people out walking, and then by 9 o'clock they're already off the trails and they're heading home. So we still keep that aspect of the accessibility to the hunter. Even though we've got 350,000 acres of state game land on the next mountain over from us, people still want to hunt their old hunting grounds that they were on for years. So we open that access up to the public, and that is free of charge. There's no charge. You don't have to sign a permit or anything like that. It's just like walking on the state game lands.
Very good. Thanks, Dave. I think that's also reflective of Rock Run's general policy. They have different dates and details, but I think, in general, most riding areas respect our need to hunt. But I like that shutdown at 9 or so. I wasn't really tuned in on that, but I like that because most hunters experience, the early hours, twilight and dawn, dusk and dawn are, the prime time to see deer, especially deer. Now, other species are, on different schedules, but the deer, if you don't get your shot by 9 o'clock, you're probably not going to see much till dusk, right? So that's interesting. Thanks, Dave, for sharing.
Okay, the next person I have asking a question is Jenny. So you should be able to unmute yourself now.
I see a Jenny Moyer.
Yep.
Still muted. There you go.
There she goes. You're there, Jenny? Says you're unmuted, so.
Might be her speakers on her monitor or something.
I'm gonna mute you back. We'll come back to you. I'll have Mike G go next.
Hello.
Yes, hi, Mike.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I'm Mike Guzzi. I don't know if my last name showed up or not.
Yes.
Okay. I'm actually a member and officer of Valley ATV Club. So obviously This is a exciting thing to see happen. To circle back to one of your earlier discussions about volunteers, I do know the Snowshoe Rails to Trails has work details that they have with, and volunteers, come down for work details to do work on the Rails to Trails and the connected Bloody Skillet DCNR state trail system, because Snowshoe Rails to Trails is connected to Bloody Skillet when the state trail system is open. So I know they do volunteer work without, I don't know what they do as far as their liability, but you may be able to reach out to them to find more information about that part as far as volunteer work.
That's a great recommendation, Mike. Part of our feasibility study here is to try to not reinvent wheels, but rather look at success stories and great programs that already exist out there, and share with folks like Dave and the Rock Run folks. And Snowshoe is a great example. Thanks for reminding us of that. We will look into that and see how they operate their volunteerism.
Yeah, most of the time we, honestly, most of our summer rides, we travel to the north central part of Pennsylvania because honestly, right now, that's where the best riding is. And Snowshoe Rails to Trails is one of the places because they do offer camping for any member. If you're a member of the Rails to Trails Association, you could camp there for free. Nice. And our club is actually a sponsor of theirs. So, they do take care of us when we're there. And, we try to go there for their events like their chicken barbecue and stuff, their fundraising events, because, they have to pay for insurance and maintenance of the trail and so forth. And also, I don't know if you're aware of the North Central ATV project that is, yes. You are aware of that?
Yes, that's Henry Sorgan's group up in the northern tier, Pennsylvania Wilds.
Yeah, Central Mountain ATV Association.
Right.
Because that's also connected to Potter County, as you mentioned. I don't know if it was you or somebody else mentioned about going out there to snowmobile next weekend, But yeah, Potter County is also another good ATV area to ride.
Yeah, Mike, I'll let other people present their questions, but absolutely, that's actually a 7-county or 9-county Northern Initiative is what it's called. It's a conglomerate of counties that came together to create an ATV riding territory, so to speak, in cooperation with the Timber Heritage Region and the Pennsylvania Wilds. And man, when you want to look at a great economic development example, that's a glowing example in our state. And Henry Sorgan is currently the president of that, and they are doing great things to expand that program. To the effect that they've also opened up, they've actually had municipalities approach them about opening up certain specific municipal streets. And the whole point there is that when we open our streets and strategically designate, I'm not a proponent of opening all streets in a borough or a city or town, but when we open strategic connectors, that allows the riders to come into our towns, buy a pizza, rent a hotel room, take advantage of our resources, services, and eateries, pubs, other places downtown that really boost the local economic development regime.
Oh,
we lost you, Mike.
Okay. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened there, but that is actually part of why we go out those areas to ride, because you do have connected areas where you could, ride your quad over to, a sandwich shop and get something to eat, or, in some places you're actually able to refuel. I remember in the earlier part of your presentation that you're looking into that is I think that's a very key aspect, is to be able to, have amenities like that, which also, like you said, helps the local businesses.
Right. Good points.
Okay, I have one comment from Matthew, and it goes into the economic development issue that OHV rental for use in the OHV park can generate economic growth, which I think is again, it's really allows people to kind of use their imagination on, what could I do that ties into this, and, really find something that would be a really interesting business venture.
Can I address that?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I'll just say, if I could retire tomorrow, that's exactly what I would be doing. We desperately need rental facilities in Pennsylvania. There's been so many cases of abuse, I guess, of rental programs that people are reluctant to try it. But I think we've turned a corner, and I believe probably Alex McDonald, maybe some of the other DCNR folks probably heard people not only looking at campgrounds. That's probably number one pursuit of private property owners, want to open up campgrounds or rent cabins. The other thing, though, is ATV rentals, because, Bill, you can speak to that. I would love to see Bill rent a few machines before he makes a purchase, so that he can try different units and see what he likes and what he doesn't like and what works, doesn't work. But there is definitely a need for that, especially for people that are coming from states away, or they don't want to go buy a machine just to have a family member ride for just one day out of the year. But if they have a large group or a guest, you really need to have that flexibility to rent a machine.
Absolutely, Jim.
Okay, I'm going to see if we can unmute Jenny. Oh,
There she is. Oh, I think something's wrong with her microphone.
yeah.
Can she type? Jenny, could you type your question?
You could go into the Q&A box, Jenny, and I can ask that way. I will let Joseph ask his question, though.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Alrighty. We're a group of local riders, and we're just wondering, is there going to be different access points, or could we access and from our houses and ride into this park?
If we buy a yearly
If we buy a yearly pass.
Well, that would be ideal for sure. I'll try to address that. If I were you, I would want to ride in. We haven't resolved how to do that yet. And I don't know, I'm not going to put Dave on the spot for this one, but I know that Anthracite Outdoor Adventure Area, Famous Reading Outdoors, they have their memberships and passes, but even though they kind of abut each other and surround each other, we haven't worked out a great way to make a universal pass so that you could be members of both, but ride back and forth and not have the trailer 2 miles away. I mean, nobody wants to do that. You want to get out and want to ride. So we will try to address that in the feasibility study, but it's ultimately going to come down to what I believe is, hopefully within the next 5-10 years, the state will come out with possibly in other words, the riders and enthusiasts would like to have a statewide pass or some sort of a universal pass, so we don't have to spend our whole day trailering, unloading, loading, being a member of 3 different clubs. We need a universal pass system, and I think that's what we need to get moving towards, but I can't even begin to tell you how soon that could happen. But I feel your pain. I agree with you. If you're local and you live, I think there could be a local pass or some kind of identifier that you wear on your helmet, or some kind of clearly identifiable indicator that you're a local and you have a pass. You paid your dues and whatever that is, and hopefully it's feasible and nominal. But whatever that is, you should be able to hopefully ride in.
Just if you let me make a quick comment on that, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Riding from your house to the property, we got beat up a lot in the beginning of that, and we still do get beat up a lot over that with our local riders and people who bought property near us. And really what it boils down to at this point in time is insurance. Everybody must be accounted for. Liability. They all must come and go from our trailhead. Now, we were able to get some cooperation with the city of Shamokin, where they passed an OHV ordinance, where if you live within the OHV zone, you can drive on the streets of the city of Shamokin. But you still have to trailer to us to drive into town if you're a local rider, unfortunately. But that's a big step into getting more open access. And something that a lot of the rider world doesn't quite understand is, you know, having that ability is great, that you can just hop on your machine, drive on a road and access to trail network. PennDOT probably is not going to let you do that, because we've gone that with Route 125 to get access into the city. They will not sign off on it. The other thing is, if you compare this to the Hatfield-McCoy Trail system, what you have to remember is the difference between there and here. In West Virginia, the state has the liability, not the landowner.
Right. That's right.
Okay. In the state of Pennsylvania, it's on the landowner. So if the state of Pennsylvania would take the liability from the landowner, that is a gigantic game changer. You know, we have gates, we have borders, we have boundaries. Our riders, due to our insurance, have to stay on our property. And if you possess an AOAA annual pass or day pass, and you also possess a Famous Reading Outdoors, you cannot cross the borders legally. We have people that do try that, and unfortunately we deal with that on a weekly basis because they just don't quite understand the differences. Where Famous Reading Outdoors has a more open riding network, where ours is an actual facility with trail markings and gates and hours of operation for safety purposes, really. And it's a lot of things that people don't think about. You know, this time of year I get beat up because we close at 4 o'clock. Well, by 5 o'clock, it's dark. You have a breakdown and you're 8.5 miles from the trailhead on a big rocky trail. Now it almost becomes a rescue mission to come and get you if there's an issue. That's just one example. But, you know, to answer your question, we all would love to do that. You know, I was a 30-year veteran trespasser of the property that I now manage. And we used to leave our house and drive right on the property and ride. And that was great. But we were all illegally riding and trespassing on someone else's property. Times have now changed. Landowners are now getting a little tired of the outlaw riding style, where these new facilities are going to be popping up more and more. And I really hope for connectivity amongst the communities, which hopefully the state will take the liability away. And I'll be quiet now.
Okay,
Dave,
so if yes, I'm still here.
Well, Joe, that's a good response from Dave. So the answer is yes, we all want to, but I hope you can take away two things. One, we need to work with the state to get us to a point where we can have more of that universal access pass or program, or, as Dave pointed out, most importantly, insurance and indemnification. The second takeaway is there are so many people that are not registered, not getting memberships, not paying day passes, that one of Dave's nightmares and headaches on a daily basis is, you know, there's 1 million points of access and people just come from everywhere and people are not cooperating. People are not paying their dues and contributing to the program. So until that happens, you kind of have to manage a gate. You have to manage a fence and a perimeter. And, you know, that's the way you have to finance the thing. So we need to encourage people to get registered.
Understood.
Thanks, Joe. Good points.
Okay, the next question from Vincent: are there plans to charge for non-OHV users?
Well, that's a great question. We motorized people are saying, well, why are we the only trail people that pay for the right, or the privilege rather, not a right, it's a privilege. Why are we the only group that pay for our trails? Some people are saying, well, let's get every bicycle in the state registered. Then they can start paying for the rail trails and they won't have to dip into our motorized fund. Well, that's a tough situation, but we are the only, we, the motorized realm, are the only self-financing group. But I don't know. I think most people would be willing to contribute something. We could even have a donation box, you know. If you had a great time climbing, give a few donations or show up to volunteer. There are givers and there are takers, and we all know who they are. So Some people will do both, or at different times, or one or the other. I think it would make a lot of sense for whoever manages and maintains this property to maybe have some kind of a minor fee for registering for the year, because two things happen. A, we're all contributing to the cause financially, whatever amount that needs to be. But secondly, it's like voting. You have a voice, you have a vote, you are being represented. They know how many climbers are coming out now. If there's only 50 of you known to exist, then, well, maybe that's not something we need to invest in. But if the reality is you have a couple thousand climbers coming out, but we don't know you're there, you could see where the money's going to be shifted to. So I think being registered and contributing on a whatever value that needs to be or should be, but keep it reasonable and feasible, especially for families and locals. I'm open to that. I mean, we pay significant fees to participate in motorized recreation. Some of the numbers Megan shared earlier, everybody else is kind of getting in free.
Okay, the next question is coming from Catherine. Are you there, Catherine?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time. I have a couple of questions, but my priority question is one that I want to reiterate from somebody that had asked earlier, which is the consideration on the noise issue with this idea. I'm a resident of Glen Lyon. I've lived here for over 30 years, and I'm very familiar, not with all the trails in the area, but also with the culture locally here and the ATV riding that goes on. It really does sound like you really want to formalize this. And I think that's going to be a little bit of culture shock for a lot of people that are primarily locals. My biggest concern is the proximity to which you're looking at these trails next to homes. The one picture that you even featured in this presentation has the tunnel. I literally live, about a 5-minute walk from that spot. So to give you an idea of where I am logistically. Where Glen Lyon is situated, it's almost in its own little valley, and noise really carries significantly. And my biggest concern is how disruptive this is going to be to the local residents of this town. And then when you also compound that with the idea that you're also going to permit or perhaps promote the idea of transport of ATVs in town and on the streets as well, it just starts to sound like we're just going to be wrapped around with this all of the time. So can you speak to that a little bit more? Because it is a big concern for residents. We do have a quality of life ordinance in our town and in the township. And then also, is there some idea around putting some sort of fencing or a perimeter around this too? Because we've experienced this with other private property owners who've taken even up to 600 acres at Keelers and put a huge fence that, is right in smack in the middle of the woods. What kind of logistics are you talking about and the layout of this and the proximity of it to the residents of this town? Can you explain that a little bit more?
I'll try to take a stab. Terry, you can formulate a response as well, but Catherine, is your fence concern, is the fence, do you view that as a good thing, or is that kind of a concern, not a good thing?
I don't think it's a good thing at all. I think that it almost looks like encroachment on what most people are very accustomed to, having open access to the woods in this area. And so if you're just looking at it from the perspective of people who live around here, it's like you're basically starting to regulate the woods and the access to the wooded areas that surround our town for whatever purposes. I'm an avid runner and a hiker. So for me, when I look at ATVs, I see them as things I have to work around and they work around me, and we coexist, but it's not exactly the most compatible relationship, especially if you have people who are coming in to do different types of activity. I'm sort of wondering why this is looped so tightly around Glen Lyon on some level. And if there's a way to, I want to emphasize, I guess, that there is a lot of noise in how we're logistically situated to pay attention to that, and especially access points. Because again, if you're going to have that much traffic coming and going with ATVs, that's certainly going to be disruptive to community members that live closest to these access points.
Yeah, that's a very valid concern, Catherine. Thank you for speaking up. We appreciate that because your voice represents dozens or hundreds of other, local constituents that maybe weren't able to make tonight's meeting or maybe just won't speak up in public. So thank you for that. We respect that and thank you. I can tell you this, it really needs to be done well. It needs to be designed well. Nobody likes chain link fence. I don't want to see it along the highways. I don't have it in my backyard. I wouldn't even put my dog in a cage that's chain link or any other type of fence that blocks the view or somehow blocks nature, critters from getting from one place to the other. I will tell you that access control that you mentioned is, imperative. So the alignment of trails and access has to be very carefully planned, very well thought through in respect of private property owners. I can tell you that there are other options in lieu of a tall fence, chain link fence that's, unsightly. We actually are experimenting with Famous Reading Outdoors right now. Everyone's probably seen at football fields and schools and parks where a lot of times you'll see a telephone pole fence, which is about 2.5 feet tall, heavy duty telephone poles. That is really the best barrier that we've come up with that looks, decent in the environment. It's low, deer can get across it, other critters can get under it, but nobody's going to lift their side-by-side or quad or even a dirt bike over a telephone pole fence. Nice thing about the telephone pole fence is it's very feasible. They actually retire telephone poles and you can build long stretches of telephone pole fence, for cost effective. So my point in saying that there's other types of barriers. There will be gates that will limit certain access points, certain machines. The one thing I have to say too, one way to address the concentrated sound concern is that you probably would only experience concentrated sound if there are large groups or planned events coming through. Typically, when you provide a magnitude of trails, a diverse trail system, people get spread out and the noise gets spread out. I think what's happening right now in our state trail system is we have so few trails that we're all on top of each other. We're all concentrating the erosion, the wear and tear, and the sound. So by dispersing folks out in the landscape, that is one way to kind of mitigate sound. There is absolutely an expectation that people will have spark arresters. They will meet the state's decibel rating. I have a quad that's probably too loud. My friends don't like it. It's too loud. It's a track quad and it shouldn't be out on the trails.
An example. That's
Yeah.
an example. That's an example of that, though. I guess what I'm trying
Exactly.
to ask is if you're talking about bringing in large influxes of people from out of the area and then adding to then also the local traffic that also occurs too, that's some of the stuff that, you're not going to be able to change how a town is situated, right? We can't change really the topography. We know where we are. Are there ways to mitigate this? I understand where you're coming from. I just, I'm looking at it on the other side of the fence on this one, in terms of how it's going to impact local residents.
Right. I can only promise you at this point two things, Catherine. First of all, your opinion is respected. Secondly, there are lots of, I think, success stories out there. And I'm going to throw out Hatfield-McCoy again, because we were surprised to visit Hatfield-McCoy. And we were riding along, I don't know, probably an hour and a half from our campground. And we came upon a private residence. And we realized, there are signs that say 10 miles per hour or less. I just saw this up in Potter County 2 weeks ago. One said 5 miles per hour. It's actually kind of difficult to go 5. You almost have, like on a dirt bike, you got to be a pretty good rider to keep your balance at 5 miles per hour. So maybe 10 miles per hour is reasonable. But the whole point is, look, the future of these trails depend upon your behavior today, now. So the rule that everybody needs to realize is this is a privilege, not a right. Please slow down for the benefit of the future of this trail. If you disregard the private property owners, this trail will and can be shut down. So, for the good of the majority, please behave. Please respect private properties. No dust, no, low noise. I saw this on a snowmobile trail as well. You just do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And you realize that, oh, okay, if I don't do this, this trail could be shut down any moment. And I don't want that. 98% of us, the constituents, the enthusiasts, will do the right thing. We'll pick up trash. We'll abide by the rules. Unfortunately, Catherine, we cannot always discipline or identify our 2%ers. Every sport has our 2%ers, the people that go rogue or they're just out there to cause trouble or, be ignorant. We cannot always patrol that. However, I can tell you, and maybe Dave can chime in again, but as the facility grows and the staff grows, we absolutely expect that there will be full-time staff and rangers, patrol. We happen to have a police chief that's very tuned into this project, very supportive, but he reminds us that, look, this is going to have to be done well, and it's going to have to respect all players. And thank you for speaking up, and you're absolutely right. People need to know where to be legally, and then they need to be expected to behave appropriately.
Yeah,
Jim,
and that's good. Good, Terry. Sorry.
Okay, Jim, if I could just add to that, I just want to let Catherine know on the steering committee meeting, or on the steering committee that we have, we do have a member from the County Planning Commission, and that was when we had our first steering committee meeting. That was one of the first points that he brought up. It's the concern of the neighboring, communities. What is the impact going to have on that noise, as Jim mentioned, dust? So that's something through the steering committee where we're going to continue to look at. And, from a zoning aspect, Jim, I don't know if you've seen, like, if buffer areas from residential, where we don't have trails, where we might not have trails within those zones, or as you mentioned, they may be areas where you have to throttle down. So I think all of those type of ideas will be incorporated into this, because, as I mentioned before, I mean, this is something that really is going to only happen with community support.
Yes.
So
Right.
it's not our objective to just say this is the way this project is going to be, and Glen Lyon live with it. That's certainly not the way that this is going to be handled.
Terry, also, the map that was shown earlier is what we toured. It's not a final design. In the design process, these things will be worked out. And you just think of the physical nature of the site. When like Jim said, the physical barriers of the hillsides and the piles and so forth, berms, that all has an effect on the sound as well. So all that gets taken into consideration in a later part of this process.
And it's not to say in the design level, Catherine, just because that one underpass was shown, that was just part of the inventory. That just means that's something we're aware that's there now. That doesn't mean it's an appropriate crossing point. The good news is that there's enough funding flowing in these projects down the road as people get registered and contribute to the program. And, the industry continues to encourage people to be part of the solution. It's quite possible that other crossings, other connections will be identified. That may not be the right connection. We may have to find better areas to connect to downtown, or resources and services that are more appropriate and less impactful.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in. Timekeeper. I want to, so there's a couple people waiting to ask questions live, and I'm going to ask them if they could type their questions or comments into the Q&A box, because what we're going to do is answer them after the meeting, and then those are going to be posted on our webpage, so everybody, would be able to see the responses at that point. But I think one of the questions that was asked in the Q&A was about the timeline.
It's Nanticoke. There is no downtown.
There is, hold on, I'm going to the next slide. when we're talking about the next steps, Jim, I think one of the things was when we're talking about timeline, not only the timeline for this project, but also the timeline for the bigger project. You could maybe discuss.
Right, real quick. So after the feasibility study is wrapping up, towards the end of this, we would need to identify first and foremost, address the liability issues, address the connectivity in general. Down the road, grants would be needed to do more detailed studies to determine, how do we cross roads? How do we get downtown? If the downtown, or if the municipalities, as they were, or destinations that are identified, I say downtown loosely, sorry about that. I just mean resources, in more densely habitated areas. Could be a pizza shop, could be something that we don't even know exists. It could be, hopefully there are new businesses that pop up. Maybe there aren't that many resources right now, but we're going to need those resources. But down the road, the grants will be pursued to help pay for some of these improvements that are identified, programs and built features. But we're here today at the green. We're working towards the red. Between the red and the green, we're probably looking at about a year or just under a year to get to that point. COVID has slowed us down a little bit. I commend the folks that pulled this meeting together. Frankly, it is the first public meeting we've hosted and been participated in virtually. It is difficult, but we appreciate the opportunity to allow us to move forward, at least virtually. Thanks for your patience. Okay, this slide is actually, we expected somebody to say, well, all this sounds great. All this pie in the sky planning and everything, but how in the world are we going to pay for all this? Well, we kind of hinted to the fact that motorized recreation is really probably one of the only self-funded programs in the state and surrounding other states. But we do have the privilege of tapping into the DCNR ATV Restricted Fund, which this study has been financed through. And quite frankly, that is paid through the annual registrations paid by responsible citizens who choose to do so. $20 every 2 years. You have to have a title, registration, and you need to insure your vehicle, whether it's a side-by-side or an ATV. It has to fall under the definition of ATV. Unfortunately, and one of the things we're working on, the motorized industry is working towards this possibility of registering dirt bikes eventually. That's another future program that could be implemented to help generate funds to help invest in facilities. The RTP is the other fund. That is 100% liquid fuel-based tax money. Every gallon of gas that's spent on outdoor recreation in the state trickles back to the state through federal highways, to PennDOT, back to DCNR. It's called the RTP program. A lot of the funding through the RTP currently goes to non-motorized trails and greenways, which has been wonderful, but it's high time that we use some of that funding for the users that generate the funds. So we're an advocate of that, of course. And then one thing we haven't seen tapped too much yet is the DCED's economic development CFA grants, the Commonwealth Finance grants. I see no reason why they couldn't be used for motorized recreation, just like they're used for park and recreation, trails and greenways, and other transportation alternative projects. Volunteer Corps, we talked a little bit about that. Absolutely, we need to tap our volunteer corps. People are passionate about their sports. Even as we heard from, we heard from earlier that the rock climbers apparently are another excellent advocacy group and willing volunteers. Dirt bike people, single track dirt bike people, hare scrambles people are incredible volunteers. They'll build their own trails. They just need a place to do it. They're excellent managers and maintainers of trails. Passionate about what they do and passionate about preserving the privilege of riding. Other major manufacturers, Kawasaki, Yamaha, Polaris, Can-Am, all the major manufacturers, most of them actually, not all of them. But Dave, I know up at AAA, Rock Run, a lot of the trails are actually named Kawasaki Trail, Yamaha Trail, Polaris Trail. These major manufacturers have stepped up and now have significant grant programs that can help us build trails, tag signs, color code, rank, beginner, intermediate, more advanced trails. So all those grants can be tapped as well, either as match or sole source financing agents. In the future, yeah, the C2P2, Community Conservation Partnerships Program. Currently, the back up to the top, the ATV Restricted Fund is coordinated and flows sort of parallel and through the C2P2 program. But I really believe, since this is a growing sport and program that's going to contribute significantly to Pennsylvania's emergence as the go-to state, the keystone state in the East for outdoor recreation, I think we need to also tap that C2P2 grant.
All right. I guess we're on to the final part. We're just closing. It's about 8 o'clock now, a little bit over. So what I want to first do, of course, is thank everybody for your participation. I think we got a lot of good feedback in that Q&A and comment session. It's good to see. I mean, we definitely have supporters in there, and we definitely have those people who have their concerns that we want to take into account. So what I'd like to ask you to do after leaving this meeting is continue to provide your input to us. Elizabeth had mentioned you could still continue to put type in questions on the Q&A. We will be answering those, and we'll be providing the answers to those on the website when we're able to accumulate all of that. Again, continue to provide your feedback through the questionnaires. Distribute those questionnaires to your friends and family, anybody that you know who might be interested in making comment on this. So, because we are going to continue to receive those questionnaires throughout the project process. A lot of this information you can stay updated on this project through the Earth Conservancy's website, which Elizabeth has pointed out there. You could also find that questionnaire, that survey on that website as well. And then an additional way that you can contact us, Elizabeth has given you her email address there. So anytime during this project, if you hear a rumor, if you have a question, certainly reach out to us and we'll try to answer that. And Jim's email contact is there. I don't know if we told you we'd put that there or not, Jim, but it's there. So
yeah, please use it, folks. Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to.
All right. And then as Elizabeth mentioned as well, we'll continue updates on our Facebook site. So again, I think in wrap up, Jim, thank you for you and your team for being part of this, steering committee members as well, and certainly we look forward to our next public meeting and hopefully rolling into bigger things. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Terry, is that video that